You're listening to episode 726 of the Father Bills Podcast. Welcome back. This week's homily is entitled Holy Families, given on the Feast of the Holy Family of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, 2019. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You know it's still Christmas?
Yes.
But not everybody thinks so. I was driving to church this morning and I noticed there was a big, those dumpsters that the trucks come and they pick them up and then you can put your greenery in there. There was an entire Christmas tree upside down stuffed in one of them. Like, what? It's kind of like they weren't rejecting Christmas, but they just were done with it, right? Do you sometimes feel like you just want to be done with? Don't answer that question. There's so many things that are going on, right? It's Christmas time and we've gathered with a family, which should be a good thing, sometimes isn't. We have all these expectations, and I mentioned this in other homilies recently, all these expectations of what Christmas should be like. And we have these ideas. This certain food, the placemat's put in a certain way. There may be even like spots where you're supposed to sit. And we all get along. Well, we expect to all get along. But isn't it funny? Whether you're the visitor coming to the house or you are the host, when everybody's leaving, somehow deep inside they're like, whew, glad they're gone. Or maybe you're the one, like, I'm glad I'm leaving. I get it. It's not your bed. It's not your situation. It's not your house. Or it is your house and it just got taken over, right? Yeah. And if it's family, we have this expectation, right? We should all get along. Moms and dads, you know that while your children have the same genetic background that comes from you, they are all very different. God's got a plan, and it's not ours. They're not like robots that, we have. They're all different. In the scriptures today, we hear from St. Paul to the Colossians, and I think it's important to reflect on it again. This is the feast of the Holy Family. And we're reflecting on what is it about them, and what is it that we are to be. We're called to be a holy family. What might this look like? Well, it begins from Colossians here, chapter 3, verse 12. Brothers and sisters, put on as God's chosen ones, and right there, be mindful. God has chosen you. Through baptism, God has chosen you. Do we actually grasp that God wants us? Keep in mind, he doesn't really need us. I love this turn of phrase. I heard it from another preacher. Like, God doesn't need us necessarily, but he wants us. What would it be? Would you rather be wanted or needed? I would rather be wanted myself. Needed is very utilitarian. I need this. Can you help me out? Turns out God doesn't need anything. God is totally self-sufficient. God is all perfect and is doing his own thing before we came along, keeping the world going. But we're chosen. It says, though, we're called to be holy and beloved. Holiness is to be other. What does that mean in our culture? That means we're not to be of the culture, but we're in a culture. And actually, we're called to share our faith within the culture, to evangelize the culture. That means we're called to then be a little different, not just take in everything without any kind of reflection and critique and live it. Well, no, we're supposed to critique it. Some of the things we hear in our culture are good for us, and some of them are bad for us. Holy and beloved. Beloved connects to that fact that we are chosen. Lots of people during this time, it gets dark. Good news, by the way, it's getting lighter now all of a sudden because we've gone through the winter solstice. But they, during this dark time, struggle. And that tape goes on in their head. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable enough. And it goes on and on and on. And it's not the truth. But how do you deal with that when that's how you feel? A lot of people struggle with that. Well, the scriptures are challenging us. Be mindful, do not be persuaded by your feelings. Know the truth, that you are beloved. And of course, who's the lover? God. Now, this becomes difficult when the people around us don't love us as God would love us. A lot of the love we sometimes experience is conditional. If you do this, then I will fill in the blank. Beloved. It also says, have heartfelt compassion. The word compassion is a compound word, meaning with passion. But passion isn't like, oh, I love my loved one. No, it's actually suffering. The word passion means suffering. To suffer with. Pope Francis, I keep saying St. Francis. Pope Francis has talked about a spirituality of accompaniment. That means we walk with people, not just when they're good. That's easy, right? But when things are bad, things are difficult. I'm thinking about, like, just yesterday, I helped bury somebody, and it was freezing out. Everybody met at the cemetery, and it was cold. I don't know how they dug the grave hole and had a big casket, but they were all waiting, and they were suffering just to be there, on top of the fact that their beloved just passed away. Not expected. Back another day, we had a funeral for Lou Murphy. Many of you know him. Of the Murphy family, the clan. It was well attended. It was wonderful. And we had sorrow. We mourned. But that's not necessarily bad. We need to mourn. A lot of us stay away from funerals. I mean, I think I might be the only one that likes funerals. Why would I like funerals? It's because now we're talking about the things that are most important, and we're listening. We get distracted by all kinds of things. Bowl games, presents, all kinds of shiny stuff and activities during this Christmas season. None of those are bad. All of those good things are a foreshadowing of something even greater. And if we remember that, we can enjoy the things in their right order. So like when the Ducks win, they will win. They're playing Wisconsin. They better win. Or are we going to have a bad day if they lose? See my point? Could we just enjoy the game for it is? And when they win, we rejoice with those who rejoice. And hopefully Wisconsin will be good losers. If you're from Wisconsin, God bless you if you're listening to this recording. We will suffer with them in a different way. We're called to be kind. Sometimes when we get together during Christmas, families get together, and remember, we're not all on the same track. While the DNA is the same or similar, we don't agree politically, maybe religiously, maybe there's an ongoing, subtle brewing fight, and someone might say something, and another person goes, "Rah!" and attacks, right? Whoa, could we, in the days that are going on forward in Christmas, be kind to each other? Especially where we disagree. Hear this now. This is 2019. In a few days, it's going to be 2020, and the political stuff is going to ramp up even more, as if it's not already ramped up. People of goodwill are going to make decisions and vote in ways that you may not agree with, or I agree with, and they may be in your family. Could we be kind and gentle and humble, these words, for and with those whom we disagree? It's hard because we get really passionate. But see, we're called to be above it all. Charity or love first. Above all things, love should be first. It says, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus. Put on love. Love is not this kind of love that is like an emotional, like a romantic love. It's speaking about sacrificial love. That's where the love is the greatest. Can you be with a family member whom you disagree and still show them love? You might know the story, St. Teresa of Lisieux. She was in the convent, a Carmelite, young, in her early 20s. And there was this older nun who would say her rosary, clinking her rosary beads, driving Therese crazy. What did she do? She chose, out of love, to treat that nun above all the other ones. At Therese's death, her autobiography becomes public to the community, and that nun finds out that actually she disliked her the most. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Therese disliked her the most, and yet she treated her as if she loved her the greatest. That's sacrificial. Can we treat those whom we disagree with that gentleness, kindness, and humility? Humility is tough, especially for us guys. We don't want to be told what to do. Husbands, we don't like being told what to do, right? I was once even preaching about something. It was something around, it had to be a pro-life thing I was talking about, I think. And someone left the church at the end and said, Bob, I'm going to vote against what you said just because you told me what to do. I'm like, what? Are we like 4 years old all of a sudden? You know, that makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, let's debate the issue or talk about the issue. We should be able to do that in kindness and gentleness, humility. But this is part of our rebelliousness, is we will just do something because we're told, do something else because we're told to do something. I remember that being when we were young adolescents, we were just rebellious, and mom and dad aren't going to tell me what to do, and I'm not going to do what they tell me to do. I'm like, we're adults. Why don't we grow up and be them? Why don't we be the adults we're called to be? As it says in the scriptures here, patient and bearing with one another. Again, it goes back to Pope Francis, bearing with one another, walking with each other. We have difficulties, and these things happen, and maybe there was a brewing discomfort in the family, and then as you get together for Christmas, kind of comes to the fore. How do we love each other in that difficulty? This is the great mystery, because it's not a recommendation. Jesus himself says we need to love one another. Love God and love one another. And it says, forgive one another. As Christ has forgiven us, we're being called to forgive others. And who are the hardest people to forgive? I think at the tail end of that scripture we heard husbands and wives. There's something about husbands and wives and children. It says wives be subordinate. Another translation is submissive. St. Paul speaks also in Ephesians 5, says that the husband's wife is to be co-submissive under the mission. Well, what's the mission? What's the mission of a husband? What's the mission of a wife? I'd like to propose this: to love, woo, encourage, challenge, and pray the other to heaven. And if that's the case, if that's the mission of your spouse, let them do that, right? Let them love you. Let them serve you. It sounds strange. It's like totally backwards, isn't it? And the reverse is the case. You remember your vows. Your vows are about serving the other. Had nothing to do with about being served. It's all about you serving. My priestly vows are similar. My calling is to serve, not to be served. And children, listen to your parents. But they're wrong. They may be. But listen to me there. Especially as you start to get to your teen years, you become more intelligent, more capable. And it seems for a while, mom and dad are getting dumber and dumber. Right? But trust me, when you move out of the teens, go into your 20s, and you're on your own, especially when you're on your own, right? Oh, wait a second. Not only are they getting smarter, we find ourselves doing what our parents did and saying the things that they said, especially if you become a parent. I don't know, has that happened yet? The phrases that you heard, they're not always good phrases, though. So you might want to, adapt them to the gospel values of love and kindness. Because keep in mind, when you were born, an owner's manual, a user's manual didn't pop out either, right? So mom and dad are trying to do the best they can with what they know because you've never happened before. I'm the 9th of 9 kids, and my mom is very clear. All of you, she says, are so different. Like, yeah, we are. It's true. And you know what? It's interesting. As we get older, we are growing closer together as a family because we're getting more wisdom. And those whatever fights we've had in our past, they're nothing. I'm not saying we're perfect. I got my stuff. They got their stuff. We all have our stuff, all our baggage. Would we be willing to put on love then so that we could be a holy family? That doesn't mean like, oh, we've arrived and that's it. No, it's a living thing. It's an ongoing, always continuing thing because life continues. Things happen. We make mistakes. We say things we didn't mean to say. We find ourselves in a situation which surprises us. We even ask ourselves, what was I thinking? I've said that many times. We just, have moments of lapse of charity. There's a book in the Catholic Church. It's called Canon Law. It's like that thick. Why do we have it? And why is it that thick? And the answer is because we human beings are goofy and the church is trying to help us. Shouldn't we all know that you shouldn't marry your first cousin? Well, apparently we don't. So that's why it's a law. Please do not marry your first cousin. And we actually need to find out. My previous parish, there was a lot of Vandahais. In Cave Junction, there's a lot of Millers. So if I get any of those coming at me, you're a Miller and you're a Miller. Okay, let's do the math here. Let's figure out how closely you're related, right? I have to do that. Or you're a Vandahai, whatever it might be. Thank goodness Holtzinger's not that common, so maybe in Bavaria, there's a lot of Holtzingers. But this is who we're called to be. We need to do this for our own sake, but also for everybody else's sake. The family is being attacked by our culture and not in the image of what God has made it to be. And we need to be those people that demonstrates what a holy family looks like. Doesn't mean we're perfect. Keep in mind, it doesn't mean that Jesus, Mary, and Joseph didn't stumble in other ways. They had to run in fear for their lives, we hear. They had to go to Egypt and come back. Can you imagine, how would you feel, mom and dad, if your son or daughter was now being targeted by the government for assassination? That the president himself is going to take out your little son or daughter. You would be afraid. Reasonably so. Whew. So they didn't have it easy. And then they came back. By the way, they didn't take a car. There was no limo. There was no Uber to get to Egypt and back to Israel. They walked it, or they rode some animals, like a camel, or more likely a donkey or a horse. Can you imagine? That's a long ways. Now that's called sport, right? There's sports where we do marathons. This is running for their lives. So they also had stress. So what I'd recommend, men, is to ask St. Joseph to help you out, to be a good husband and father. And ladies, wives, ask Mary to help you as well, to be a good mother and a wife. And children, sometimes you may think you know it all. Yeah, Jesus did actually know it all. So ask him for help. He's probably the best. Ask him for when you're upset and you want your way, ask Jesus. Now, it doesn't mean you're always going to get what you're asking for, right? He's going to say, no, you shouldn't do that sometimes. Listen to him. And your parents have a lot of years more than you do. And they may not be answering like, well, let me calculate this out and describe the whole thing for you. They might just say, because I said so. Anybody have that answer, right? Yeah. Because there's a immense detail. Trust them. Trust them. And no, it may not be what you hope for. When you get older, they will be able to explain it to you because you will have more experience in your own life. They have a wisdom about what they're doing. As a pastor and a priest, being a pastor, I've learned a lot of things being a pastor. One of them is don't solve everything right away. Don't jump into everything right away, and listen more. And it's interesting how things seem to work themselves out more than not. Sometimes the parents are actually losing sleep at night because of the things they're worrying about for you. I've worried about things for our church, but I go, no, God, this is your church. I remember the saying of Pope John the 23rd. It goes something like this. Dear Lord, the bishops are complaining, the cardinals are mad at me, it's late, and it's your church. I'm going to bed. I'm like, yeah, I love it. This is not my church. I'm assigned here, gladly. It's God's church, and you are his family. I'm just kind of helping out. May this Christmas, which continues, right, until the baptism of the Lord, is a time for us to strive to be a holy family. It's very likely in my neighborhood, I'm going to be the only one with Christmas lights up on that day. And they'll go, what? That's a weird guy. I'm like, yep, that's true. That is true. Christmas is a season to love and to be with family, to recognize that Christ had a family. He had to learn through his family. And he submitted himself to his mom and dad. Interesting that God did that. Maybe if he could do that, being God, we could do that for each other.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bales Podcast. Now, as we enter into the year 2020, what things are you thinking about that you want to take care of or accomplish? And I would hope that maybe one of those would be your relationship with your family. I know that my family is very precious to me. I have a mom who's 94 years old, and for me, I focus a lot of my attention to whatever's going on in her life as much as I can. While she lives far away, I still try to make effort to go see her, and I usually stay with her. Even though I could stay with probably other family members, I think they all understand that at this point in my mom's life, and our mom's life, I should say, she's our focus, because she won't be with us for long. Unless she's going to live to 115, well, then that might be different, but I don't see that happening. And she also is aware of this. And she's a great example of love as a mother. And I've mentioned her many times in homilies in the past. And so it's an important thing to be with her and to show her love, and also to be a servant to her. I think of all the things that as I was growing up that I was a jerk about or selfish about, and all the sacrifices she made for me and for the rest of the family. And this is the least that I can do to somehow show her my love and to reconcile anything that needs to be reconciled, and just to be the best son I can be, imperfect as I am. Now, if you have any questions or any comments, I encourage you to just go to my website, fatherbill.org, FRBILL.org, and there you can, again, as I've said in the past, you can email me and see what's going on my social media sites and things like that. And in the meantime, may God bless you and have a great week. Bye-bye. Oh, wait, one more thing. Merry Christmas!